Greetings, traveler of time. You're listening to an old historian who carries secrets from the Middle Ages. If you end up relaxing or even drifting off to sleep, my mission will already be fulfilled. But before that, tell me, where are you listening from? Maybe it's a small town lit by modern street lamps, or a quiet room where only the hum of a fan fills the air. Wherever you are, I invite you to join me on this calm night. Picture yourself opening an ancient book, its rough pages creaking softly, and with them, a window opens to a distant past, where every detail holds the power to stir both sleep and imagination. The scene I wish to paint before your eyes doesn't begin with clashing swords, but with an open meadow at dusk. The sun, low on the horizon, gilds the tips of resting spears, while a gentle breeze stirs banners painted with simple designs, dyed in natural hues, reds drawn from madder roots, and blues pressed from woad. You hear, faint and dreamlike, the distant bleating of sheep and the muffled rhythm of hammers striking horseshoes. The air is cool, almost chilly, carrying the damp fragrance of freshly cut grass, and every breath of wind seems to carry echoes of memory. It's curious how these gatherings were also moments of observation. Villagers would walk to nearby hills just to watch, as though witnessing an inevitable performance. Many carried baskets of bread and cheese, hoping the fight would be quick, for they knew long battles were rare. In fact, did you know that most medieval battles lasted less than an hour? More often than not, it was troop morale, or a clever position that decided everything within moments, sparing the field from a prolonged bloodbath. That's the first clue I'll give you. War wasn't always as the epics tell it. Now imagine the ground beneath the soldier's feet, not dry, firm earth as it's often described, but damp soil, soft and giving way under every step. Lumps of mud clung to leather soles, snapping off in quiet intervals. The touch of cold air against the skin contrasted sharply with the stifling heat trapped inside iron armor. That constant play between outside and inside, lightness and weight, cold and heat, shaped the physical reality of each man in the field. Perhaps you can feel something similar now, lying still. How different temperatures coexist, the warmth of a blanket against your body and the cool freshness drifting through an open window. And the soundscape of those preparations was fascinating. It wasn't just the metallic ring of swords, but a whole ensemble of subtler noises. The creak of leather straps, the sharp chime of a helmet being adjusted, the steady snorts of restless horses. Woven into that came human voices, rising in chants of courage or whispered prayers in Latin, as if each word carried more protection than a shield. If you close your eyes, you might hear echoes like that now, not as the noise of war, but as an old, repetitive lullaby hidden under the weight of history. The colors, too, were far less vivid than one might imagine when picturing medieval banners and garments. Dyeing fabric was costly and demanding. Only nobles wore bright, pure hues, while common soldiers marched in earth tones, browns, faded greens, the grey of untreated linen. This natural palette let armies blend easily into the fields, as though the land itself were ready to swallow them back. Today, used to crisp uniforms and bold patterns, you might be surprised to picture a medieval force looking less like a spectacle of colour and more like an extension of the very landscape. You may sense tension building now, but allow me to balance it with hope, for just as the battlefield could be a stage for violence, it was also a place for unexpected encounters. Merchants came to sell cheap wine, children slipped through the crowds chasing stories, and monks walked among the lines offering blessings. Not everyone came to fight. Many came to witness, to trade, to pray, and some even to stop what seemed inevitable. It was as if life insisted on blooming even in the most uncertain ground, like a flower sprouting between broken stones. Think of the temperature now. The morning's cold could cut like a blade, yet by midday the sun's weight turned armor into ovens. Soldiers sweated in silence, salt stinging their eyes as it trickled down their brows. Some chewed sprigs of herbs to ease the discomfort, believing they cooled the mouth and freshened the breath. Isn't it striking to realize that such human details, sweat, thirst, discomfort, shaped great political and military decisions? History has always been tied to the body, to its simple limits. And then there was the smell, completing the picture. Crushed grass mingled with the scent of leather, grease, and polished iron. Now and then, the wind carried something unexpected, the sweetness of wildflowers, or the wood smoke of campfires. Less pleasant odors were there too, sweat horses, salted meat gone bad. But it's this very mix that makes the scene vivid. Where there's beauty, there's roughness. Where there's delicacy, there's coarseness. Perhaps it's in that balance that the Middle Ages find their authenticity, reminding us the past was never built on extremes alone, but on blends. Now picture yourself stepping closer to a line of soldiers. Their eyes catch the golden glow of twilight. Some look confident, others hide their fear poorly. You can hear their heavy breathing, a collective sound like a human wind. You wonder what fills their thoughts. Memories of home, of children, of fields left untended. It isn't absolute silence, but a shared quiet, full of unspoken meaning. That silence before battle becomes as unforgettable as the fight itself. Among those men was always someone carrying more than weapons. He carried stories. The peasant who'd seen his village raided years ago and now marched with contained rage, or the young blacksmith's apprentice who saw in war a chance to change his fate. These are the small human stories, discreet yet ever present at the corners of history, and it's in them that we find echoes of ourselves, each of us carrying our own battles, our own memories shaping choices. The medieval field, in that sense, is just a distant mirror of what remains human in every age. And yet, traveller, it's curious to ask, why did so many battles end within minutes? Maybe because the human body could only bear so much. Maybe because strategy outweighed sheer force. Maybe because morale could break in an instant at the sight of a clever maneuver. What seemed just beginning might already be over within moments. And that decided not only the fate of kings and lords, but also of every simple man who returned home alive. Let's hold on to that question for now, for there's still much to see before we unravel the mystery fully. Night begins to fall across the field, and the air cools gently. The wind no longer runs free, but slides cold across men's backs, making shoulders shrink. The sky, brushed with fading pink clouds, gives way to the first stars, each spark watching silently from above. This is the moment when tension meets hope. On one side, the fear of tomorrow, on the other, the comfort of tonight, where nothing has yet been decided. And you, resting now, may feel the same. carrying the weight of future choices while savoring the lightness of still having time. Sounds fade, leaving behind something close to a natural song. The crackle of campfires, whispered prayers in small tents, the distant murmur of barefoot steps on grass. Together they form a calm, repetitive melody that soothes both soldiers and villagers. There's something universal in that sound. Across all times and peoples, night has always brought some rhythm of rest. And maybe that's why, even centuries later, we can fall asleep by imagining the same scene, history itself cradling us like an invisible lullaby. Here's a small curiosity. Did you know that in many medieval armies, drums weren't only for morale, but also for command? Each beat signaled a precise order, and without them, an army could fall into chaos. Sound was both weapon and guide. Now close your eyes for a moment and imagine the slow, deep rhythm rolling across the field, steady as a heartbeat. If you match your breath to that cadence, you'll notice how it too can become comforting, helping your body and mind relax. And so the medieval paradox reveals itself between the threat of war and the comfort of small routines, between fear and hope. Every detail wove into a tapestry where nothing was absolute. People laughed and sang on the eve of battle, just as they wept and prayed on days of celebration. Life was always an inseparable blend of contrasts. And perhaps that's why, when we revisit this past, we feel both unease and peace, because we know that even among swords and banners, there were still hands picking flowers and eyes gazing at the stars. Now, traveler, let this final image settle gently in your mind. A field lit by campfires, the sound of distant drums, the smell of burning wood, the soft chill of the night air. It's in this atmosphere that our journey begins. Not with the thunder of war, but with the quiet details that open up an entire world. The field from the night before awakens under a soft mist, as if the sky itself wished to delay the meeting of the armies. Dew-damp grass reflects the pale first rays of sunlight, and the chill of dawn still hangs like a veil over every suit of armor. You can feel the moisture in the air, almost like a breath brushing against your skin, and hear the faint crack of earth under slow, deliberate steps. It's at this moment that the narrative narrows, drawing closer to a specific point. The commander's tent, where silent decisions shape the fate of hundreds of men. Inside the tent, torchlight flickers against coarse fabric, casting shadows that seem to take on lives of their own. The warmth of the flames contrasts with the cold that seeps through the seams, creating a space of extremes. The commander leans over a parchment map, simple lines marking hills and streams. You can almost hear the scratch of a quill dipped in ink, tracing meeting points and routes of retreat. That small act carries the promise of order within the chaos to come. Curiously, medieval battle maps were crude. Many were nothing more than rough sketches, drawn in charcoal or chalk on leather. Precision mattered less than memory and the veteran's eyes. The commander trusted his scouts as much as the symbols on the parchment. It reminds us that behind every military decision lay both improvisation and faith, as though the land itself was as uncertain as the future. Around him, young squires move quietly, setting lances in place, sharpening swords, warming wine in small pots. The scrape of metal on stone and the hiss of heated iron create a background rhythm, almost like a lullaby in its repetition. The aroma of steaming wine mixes with the scent of worn leather and hay scattered across the ground. Every detail carries a paradoxical note, preparation for battle and, at the same time, a ritual of daily life, as if getting ready were as natural as waking or praying. Outside, the camp stirs slowly. Fires still smoke, and men rise with stiff bodies after a night on hard ground. The smell of smoke mingles with coarse bread baking over embers, while horses neigh restlessly, sensing movement ahead. A lone crow caws from the tip of a spear planted in the soil. The scene feels suspended, like a breath caught between inhale and exhale, and it's in this pause that a familiar yet essential figure appears, the messenger. Riding a light horse, he cuts through the mist in haste. The rhythmic pounding of hooves on damp soil echoes like a natural drum, growing louder with each second. His short tunic, muddied at the hem, flutters in the breeze. His eyes are steady, though his lips murmur rehearsed words, as if he's been reciting them on the way. He carries no sword or shield, yet he holds the power to alter the day's course. This often forgotten figure was vital in medieval armies. Messengers faced dangers as great as soldiers. Capture meant death, yet they were the threads holding scattered groups together. Without them, communication unraveled, and the army would collapse into confusion. Their role reminds us that victory often depended more on words carried across fields than on blades drawn in combat. He dismounts before the tent and hands the commander a small leather pouch. Inside, a red wax seal guards a short message. The sound of the seal breaking is soft, almost delicate, and the parchment within carries the scent of fresh ink. The commander reads in silence, and for an instant time itself seems to hold. You feel your curiosity rising. What words could fit in so small a space, yet weigh on the fate of so many? The contents of the letter remain hidden. The commander closes his eyes, breathes deeply, and tucks the parchment against his chest. The silence grows heavy, broken only by the creak of leather as he straightens. Outside, soldiers glance over, trying to read his face, to guess whether the day will bring death or truce. That cloud of uncertainty hovers, and in it lies the very essence of medieval battle, more expectation than combat itself. Meanwhile, squires line up shields, stacking them like makeshift walls. The air fills with the smell of polished wood and hammered iron. Some men soften stale bread in heated wine, chewing slowly, as if stretching out the meal could delay the future. It's striking to realize how ordinary acts, eating, drinking, adjusting clothing, became quiet forms of resistance before a clash. In the middle of routine, a nearly poetic scene unfolds. A young soldier ties faded ribbons to the hilt of his sword. They're not charms of war, but tokens from home, scraps of cloth gifted by loved ones. He touches the fabric, closes his eyes, and smiles faintly, as if the battlefield had for an instant turned into his village yard. Such details remind us that in every age we carry fragments of who we are, even into the unknown. A horn sounds in the distance, low, drawn out. It's the signal to gather ranks. The echo rolls through the mist like a wave, rousing the last stragglers. Cold air rushes into lungs, mixing nerves with vigor. The field becomes a stage, each man stepping into place like an actor in an ancient play, rehearsed for generations. There are no shouts of enthusiasm, only quiet murmurs, men holding their strength for the moment to come. Medieval horns, curiously, were carved from ox horn or cast from metal, and each sound carried its own meaning. A long note could mean advance, while 3 short blasts might call retreat. This simple yet precise code replaced words amid the chaos. It was music turned into a secret language of war, notes not sung but obeyed. You notice the camp slowly shedding its face of routine and taking on the features of an army, Lines form, banners rise, horses are led to the front, damp grass bends beneath boots and hooves. The smoke fades from the air, replaced by the metallic tang of iron, warmed by friction. The mood shifts, and with it, the breath of every man. Even nature itself seems to hold its breath. Yet amid all this movement there's a pause. The commander raises his hand, and everything halts. Silence falls so suddenly, it feels as though even the birds stop singing. In that emptiness, expectation is born. What will he decide? The letter, still pressed to his chest, remains unread by all but him, and he stares at the horizon as if hearing something no one else can. The sun's light breaks through the mist, unveiling a wide field. In the distance, shadows stir the other army. For a heartbeat, tension rises, but it softens into reflection. They aren't monsters or heroes, just men in another formation, as human as those you've been following. That mix of nearness and distance brings a paradoxical calm. The battle feels close, and yet time still shields you. You realize then that the fight isn't only physical, but also mental. The waiting, the doubt, the imagination of what's to come, all of it consumes more energy than clashing swords. And perhaps this is why battles often ended so quickly, because a single gesture, a single word, or a fragile agreement could prove stronger than steel. And so the first approach ends, a field divided by mist, two armies facing each other, and a letter tucked away holding its secret. The atmosphere hangs suspended, as though the world itself were breathing slowly, waiting for the next revelation. The mist slowly unravels, like a delicate cloth being lifted from something kept hidden for centuries. As the haze thins, the field reveals details once concealed. Tall grass swaying gently, droplets of dew sparkling like tiny crystals, and even the faint tracks left by cartwheels that cross the ground during the night. The silence between the two armies is so dense that every isolated sound feels amplified. The caw of a crow, the deep breath of a horse, the snap of a boot pressing against dry wood. Among the soldiers in the front line, every small gesture betrays layers of humanity. One man strokes his short beard, trying to steady trembling fingers. Another grips the shaft of his spear tightly, as if drawing strength from the weapon itself. The smell of fresh sweat mingles with the musk of aged leather, creating an atmosphere both rough and real. In the background, a young soldier watches with wide eyes, perhaps facing his first battle, and it's impossible not to wonder whether he thinks more of bravery or of home. The commander, still carrying the letter pressed to his chest, adjusts his stance and fixes his gaze on the horizon. His presence is marked by contrast, the gleam of his armor catching the morning sun and the heavy shadow over his face, revealing the weight of decisions he cannot share. He stands like a bridge between two worlds, the violence poised to erupt and the fragile chance of peace. The creak of his armor as he shifts serves as a metallic reminder that every move is being watched. The banners begin to rise, heavy fabrics embroidered with simple emblems, lions, crosses, lyres, flutter in the wind. The rustle of cloth stirred by the breeze creates a rhythm, almost hypnotic, as if the field itself were breathing. In medieval times, banners weren't only marks of identity, but practical guides. In the chaos of combat, soldiers relied on them to find their leaders. Without these signals, whole ranks could scatter. One detail stands out: an old warrior, his face etched with deep lines, strokes the head of his horse before mounting. The animal neighs softly, as if sensing the moment's weight. The man's touch on damp fur becomes a tender contrast in the shadow of war. That small scene lingers, proof that even on the edge of danger, there was space for silent bonds of affection. Humanity revealed itself most clearly in such fleeting gestures. The approach of the other army grows sharper. The outlines of their spears pierce the thinning mist, reflecting faint light like shards of broken glass. The sound of synchronized footsteps spreads across the field, a rhythm so steady it echoes like drums. You can almost feel a vibration in the air, as though the earth itself answered the collective weight of men. And watching them, you realize they too wear ordinary expressions: fear, resolve, fatigue. The divide between enemy and ally feels more fragile than imagined. It's then that the letter returns to the scene. The commander, with deliberate care, pulls it from his chest and hands it to one of his advisors. The broken seal no longer holds its secret, yet the words remain hidden from the others. The advisor reads in silence, nods, and whispers something inaudible from afar. The murmur ripples outward like a contained wave, feeding everyone's curiosity. And you might ask, how could a few written lines decide the fate of a battle? The answer lies in the very structure of medieval life. Fragile alliances, promises of land, or sudden news, like reinforcements arriving or a distant fortress falling. Often the course of a fight wasn't decided by steel, but by information delivered at just the right time. War in many ways was also a game of words, letters and messengers. Meanwhile, the mood shifts subtly. The sun climbs higher, warming the metal of armor until it stings, while the scent of heated iron mixes with crushed hay underfoot. Drops of sweat slip beneath heavy helmets, stinging eyes. The memory of dawn's chill lingers, clashing with the growing heat, a double discomfort that could tip the endurance of men. More often than blades, exhaustion and the burning weight of armor decided how long a battle lasted. Ranks tighten. Soldiers kneel briefly to adjust sandals, tighten straps, or whisper hurried prayers. The collective sound of these small actions builds into an irregular cadence, like a fragmented melody. In this rhythm, waiting stretches on, and each minute grows longer than the last. Yet still no clash comes, only expectation, as if time itself were teaching patience before the inevitable. One little-known detail is that armies often spent hours merely watching each other before combat. Simply standing aligned against the enemy tested courage and drained spirits. In some cases, this standoff alone led to surrender without a fight. If one side lost heart at the sight of the other's resolve, weapons were lowered before blood was shed. It's striking to think the gaze could carry as much weight as the sword. Suddenly, a sound breaks through, the snap of a bow being drawn. The sharp note cuts the silence like a string about to break. All eyes turn toward the archer, but the arrow isn't loosed. What remains is only the memory of what could have been, a battle nearly sparked, yet withheld. This suspended moment shows how war always lived on the edge, both of beginning and of ending, before it began. The commander steps forward, helm tucked beneath his arm. His voice carries, steady but calm, commanding patience. It's not anger, but discipline that speaks. The silence returns, and the soldiers obey. That simple gesture shows how leadership, more than strength, held the army together. Without firm command, fear could dissolve ranks. With it, even dread could be restrained. The wind picks up, stirring dust and whipping flags. The field shifts before your eyes, as though nature itself had joined the play. Dust blurs the line between the two armies, making it momentarily impossible to tell them apart. In that haze lies a powerful metaphor. Stripped of clarity, all men look alike, reduced to the same fragile humanity. The gust carries with it the chant of monks. Clad in simple robes, they walk between the lines, murmuring prayers in Latin. Their soft voices contrast with the hardness of steel, a breath of hope woven into the fabric of war. This moment reinforces the medieval duality, the sacred and the profane, side by side, inseparable. And then the letter is lifted once more. The commander gazes across the horizon, raises his hand, and calls for stillness. The battle does not begin. Instead, the armies remain frozen, like living statues. Curiosity swells. What will come next? It feels as if history itself is holding its breath, guarding a secret it has yet to reveal. And so this chapter closes, not with the clash of weapons, but with prolonged silence, a silence full of meaning, where every detail matters, where every breath becomes part of the story. The letter remains, the enemy watches, and the future rests in uncertainty. The field awakens to a new rhythm. The mist that once veiled everything now dissolves slowly, revealing more color and form. The green of the grass emerges bright, streaked here and there with dark patches of mud, while the golden glow of sunrise spreads like spilled paint. The atmosphere is no longer still. The world seems to take a deep breath and begin to move. You can almost feel this shift in your own body, like the slow advance of morning light bringing with it a change of mood. The ranks of soldiers, statuesque until now, begin to adjust with their first steps. The steady thud of boots on earth forms a cadence, firm but not yet violent, more like the rhythm of rehearsal than combat. Horses whinny restlessly, hooves striking the damp ground. The air hums with restrained energy, and even the wind seems to pick up, scattering fine dust into the cool morning air. Banners, raised solemnly before, now whip more fiercely, showing their details. Simple yet meaningful emblems dance against the clear sky. It's curious to think that in the Middle Ages, many of these symbols weren't only marks of nobility, but practical tools to keep order. They were visual anchors in confusion, a primitive form of communication, like beacons for those lost amid dust and noise. There was something poetic in the movement itself. The dust rising from countless feet created a golden haze, lit by the sun, transforming men and horses into almost mythical figures. From afar, they seemed less flesh and bone than living silhouettes shaped by light. The smell of iron and leather grew sharper as the heat rose, while voices mingled with the deep thrum of drums. The moment carried tension, yet also a strange sense of harmony. Within this scene, the perspective shifts. Decisions don't flow only from the central commander. Messengers dart across the field, weaving between the wings of the army. They ride swiftly, flinging loose soil behind them. The orders they carry are short, single words, coded gestures, but they hold immense importance. Without them, cohesion would fracture and the mass would collapse into chaos. Many messengers, surprisingly, were boys of just 14 or 15, chosen for their speed and courage to cross dangerous lines. They were quiet figures, yet indispensable. You can almost picture the racing heart of one of these youths, galloping between banners and spears, hearing only the horse's breath and the pounding of hooves against the ground. It's a deeply human detail that ties the grandeur of the scene back to the fragility of everyday life. The sun grows hotter, shifting the feel of the air. The chill of dawn vanishes, and now the armor begins to burn against skin, nearly unbearable. The sharp scent of sweat mingles with heated metal, a heavy odor that clings to the senses. The contrast of cold and heat lingers in the body, a discomfort doubled. Weather alone could dictate how long a clash lasted. Many battles ended early, simply because men's bodies could no longer endure. Movement stirs inside each man as well. Hearts beat faster, breaths shorten, thoughts race. Every soldier carries a private world within. Memories of family, unspoken fears, promises whispered in the dark. Some touch hidden amulets beneath their tunics, others murmur quick prayers, while some simply close their eyes for a heartbeat, guarding a moment of stillness before what lies ahead. In the distance, the other army shifts as well. Whole lines advance slowly, the sound of their march echoing deep and steady. The tension of approach and distance creates a peculiar effect. Both forces seem to move toward the same center, yet the meeting feels delayed, as if the earth itself wanted to stretch the instant before impact. The essence of battle often lived in that span, not in the strike, but in the walk toward it. Among the loudest sounds are the war horns. Low and prolonged, they roll across the field like the voices of unseen giants. Each note carries meaning: advance, halt, turn. This music, as strange as it seems, was as vital to war as the steel of weapons. Medieval battle wasn't only fought with iron, it was held together by sound. In the middle of collective motion, one quiet moment stands out. An older soldier with grey hair adjusts a young recruit's slipping helm. The gesture is small, yet it feels like a father straightening a child's coat before school. That tenderness becomes a flicker of hope in a charged scene, a reminder that even here there was room for kindness. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of distant smoke. Perhaps campfires dying down, perhaps nearby villages continuing their daily lives. The mix of aromas, burnt wood, baking bread, sweaty leather, spins a sensory tapestry around the scene. Breathing deeply, you almost feel as if you're there among them, sharing the same thick, heated air. A crow cuts across the sky, its harsh caw echoing like a warning. Yet moments later, the soft song of swallows balances the sound, bringing lightness back. Nature, as always, offered signs of both tension and hope, depending only on how they were read. For some, the crow meant death. For others, it was just a hungry bird in flight. As the movement continues, you sense the rhythm isn't only physical but emotional. The collective heart of the army beats faster, held steady by discipline and expectation, and yet not a single sword has been raised. The field remains suspended, the climax inevitable, but always postponed. It's the waiting itself that builds the true weight of the moment. The commander, steady at the center, lifts his hand once more. A simple gesture, yet powerful. Like an unseen wave, the movement halts. Silence falls so abruptly it seems to split the air. This command over pause is perhaps the greatest sign of power, the ability to turn hundreds of men into living statues with a single motion. And in that pause, the memory of the letter returns. Kept close to the commander's heart, it seems to weigh more than every weapon combined. Its secret still unknown to most, it quietly directs choices rippling outward. Curiosity grows, like a flame refusing to die against the wind. The heat swells, the sun climbs, and the morning presses on. Each minute feels stretched into eternity, yet fleeting like a single breath. That paradox is part of the rhythm of change. Time itself seems to stretch and fold, shaped by the intensity of waiting. And you, watching now, may feel the same effect. A deep relaxation, even in a story wrapped in suspense. Suddenly, a murmur ripples through the ranks. Not a cry, but a wave of whispers, like leaves stirred by wind. Something is about to unfold, though no one knows what. The whole field leans forward, as if every body had become a single question waiting for an answer. It's here that change peaks. Not in the act itself, but in the breath before it. And so this chapter ends, with the field alive in movement, tension and hope walking side by side, and a secret still sealed within a letter, waiting for its moment. Silence hangs over the scene like a fine veil, and you, traveler, carry with you the promise that the next step will bring revelations unexpected. The entire field moves like a single body, yet it's in the details that real life reveals itself. Between the aligned ranks and the raised banners, one simple gesture stands out, a common soldier adjusting the leather strap of his shield. He runs his fingers slowly across the wooden surface, tracing the marks left by blows long past. The rough texture speaks louder than words, reminding him that every object carries memory, like silent scars that never leave their owner. The sun glints against metal, throwing blinding flashes that also highlight small corners of the field, as though signaling secret signs. A young man tilts his head and for a moment catches his own reflection in the polished blade of his sword. What stares back isn't only his face, but the weight of expectation. It's as if he were gazing at a version of himself that doesn't yet exist, a future uncertain, reflected in steel. Amid these small scenes, sound begins to swell. Not the steady beat of the drums, which continue their patient rhythm, but the voices of men. Stifled laughter escapes here and there, muffled by tension. One recalls a story from his village, another whispers a prayer, and together these fragments weave a fabric of irregular sound. It's striking to realize that even in the wait before battle, daily life insisted on finding its way in. Memories, stories, common gestures. One moment stands out even more clearly, a piece of bread shared between two soldiers. Its scent is plain, half-baked, hardened dough, but the gesture is laden with humanity. They chew slowly, almost in unison, each bite a stolen piece of calm against an uncertain future. It reminds us that before they were soldiers, they were men, and hunger didn't wait for the outcome of battle. Records tell us that, in fact, the most common food in medieval camps was black rye bread. Dense, heavy, hard to digest. It was cheap, long-lasting, and could sustain men on long marches. It wasn't pleasant, but it was life itself. That small detail shows how survival hinged on simple choices, how battles began not with swords, but in the stomach. Between the ranks are also gestures of devotion. One soldier pulls from his tunic a small wooden cross, polished by years of touch. He presses it to his lips and murmurs silent words. The object is light, yet its symbolic weight is greater than any armor. Beside him, another man carries a sack of stones, tokens from his children's games at home. Small amulets of faith and family set against the harshness of war. A gentle breeze carries the scent of crushed herbs trampled beneath horses' hooves. The fresh aroma mingles with the iron and leather, forming an unexpected harmony. A horse shakes its head, damp mane brushing against its rider's cheek, and the man smiles faintly at the touch. It's in such intimate details that we see life persisting, even on the eve of conflict. A young squire, perhaps no more than 15, holds his lord's helm. He turns it in his hands, studies the uneven gleam of the metal, and runs a finger inside, catching the sharp scent of sweat soaked deep into the lining. It isn't just an object, it's a second skin for the warrior. His careful gaze shows the reverence with which every piece was tended, for they knew life and death might hang on the thickness of iron. For many of these boys, camp life was also schooling. They weren't only assistants, but apprentices of a brutal craft, where every detail was a lesson. They learned to watch, to mimic, to remember. Their silence carried its own intensity, that of knowing each movement could shape their whole future. In this way, even in apparent insignificance, squires guarded the thread of continuity. Further back, a group of men sits briefly on the damp earth. They breathe deeply, rub their hands for warmth, and share stories in hushed tones. The texture of cold soil against their palms ties them to the present in a way almost meditative. The scent of wet grass rises, blending with the distant rhythm of steps beyond. Time seems to stretch here, as if there were still room for stillness within the field of war. The sun now burns stronger, and beads of sweat slide down soldiers' temples. Some wipe it away with a sleeve, others let it trickle, resigned. The heat under armor grows suffocating, and many shift straps for relief. This silent battle against nature itself reveals a simple truth. Sometimes the fiercest enemy wasn't the one across the field, but the weight of the sun above. Amid that heaviness, an unexpected sound arises, the plucking of a lute, an improvised musician, perhaps a servant, perhaps a soldier without urgent duty, draws soft chords from the strings. Notes drift through the air like drops of light, clashing gently against the hardness of steel all around. It's surprising and yet not to realize that even at the edge of battle there was room for music. For in every age, melody found its way into life. Historical accounts even tell us that troubadours often accompanied nobles on campaigns. Their songs were not mere distractions, but tools of spirit, meant to inspire courage or soothe restless minds. Music reshaped time, softened fear, and carried men forward. For those who listened, even tense soldiers could find a pause within themselves. Nearby, a young archer studies the curve of his bow. He runs his hand over the smooth wood, testing its give, and breathes deeply. The scent of waxed string rises, mingling with the oil used to guard it. For him, this isn't only a weapon, it's an extension of his own body. That intimacy reveals how deeply men and their tools were bound, a connection almost spiritual. Beside him, another soldier grips a short dagger, a gift from his mother before he left. The blade is plain, unadorned, but he regards it as treasure. Every mark is remembered, every detail cherished. It reminds us that even weapons could hold tenderness, serving as threads of memory in the harsh weave of war. The wind blows warmer now. Heat radiates from steel, the touch of metal against skin burning and uncomfortable. Some fan their faces with tired hands, while others shut their eyes for an instant, retreating inward in search of coolness. This balance between strain and hope, suffocation and small relief, is what makes the moment so profoundly human. And among all gestures, one is the most striking. An old knight seated on horseback strokes his mount's mane while gazing at the horizon. His eyes, furrowed with age, don't reflect fear, but a calm, almost timeless. He seems to know life is not measured by the next clash, but by every small moment that leads to it. His serenity spreads quietly, a flame of steadiness lighting those around him. The drums return, deep and steady, reminding everyone that time doesn't stop. Each beat is a step toward the future, yet also an invitation to inhabit the present. Listening to the slow rhythm, even the body adjusts, the breath falling into its cadence. And so the scene closes, not with violence, but with intimacy. War remains suspended, while life insists on showing itself in small details. This intimate gaze ends here, in bread shared, in a hidden cross, in unexpected music, in the gentle touch on a horse's mane. It's in these fragments that the true Middle Ages are revealed, not just in grand battles, but in the small human gestures that endured through time. The memory of shared bread and a hidden cross still lingers, but now the gaze widens to embrace the whole. The field, once seen in intimate fragments, unfolds in its entirety like a painted canvas. On one side, compact ranks stand in rigid order. On the other, waves of motion ripple, soldiers adjusting their positions like pieces on a chessboard. The wind sweeps across the plain, carrying with it the mingled scents of iron, leather, and smoke, binding everything together in a single breath. The sunlight now reigns fully, chasing away any lingering shadows across the ground. On the nearby hills, villagers gather in clusters to watch from afar. The contrast is striking. Simple folk in worn tunics, shaped by labor, silently gazing at noble warriors clad in gleaming steel. For many peasants, to witness a battle was almost an unavoidable spectacle, a theatre of life where the price of entry was anxiety. This habit of watching from afar, both curious and perilous, is recorded in many chronicles. Men, women, even children sought high ground from which to witness what they believed to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. And yet most did not grasp the strategies at play. What they saw were colors, movements, and sounds, like spectators at a grand performance whose dialogue they could not understand. It reminds us that the Middle Ages were shaped not only by warriors, but also by their silent audiences. From the camp, movement spreads outward like ripples in a pond. Supply wagons lumber forward, pulled by heavy oxen. The creak of wood and the snap of ropes form another kind of music, rough yet steady. Inside them lie barrels of water, sacks of bread, and bundles of hay. None of it seems glorious, yet all of it is vital. Without supplies, war dissolved into hunger. This detail reveals that every battle rested on invisible foundations. In fact, records show that up to 70% of medieval warfare was logistics, not combat. Preparing routes, storing food, securing horseshoes, these consumed more time than fighting itself. War, when it finally erupted, was only the peak of a long, grinding process. Watching wagons cross the field, we realized that each soldier depended more on the baker and the blacksmith than on the distant commander. The sounds multiply. Hammers still strike iron, monks chant low prayers, horses snort, and drums hold their steady beat. It's as if each element of the army were an instrument in a vast, improvised orchestra. To the attentive ear, nothing feels out of place. The metallic clatter, the crackle of wood, the murmur of men. Together they compose an uneven symphony of medieval life in its wholeness. The view also lifts toward the sky. Birds wheel in wide circles, drawn by the movement below. Some were read as omens. Eagles meant victory, crows signaled death, doves brought hope. Though symbolic, such signs carried real weight over morale. A single bird could shift the mood of an army. The sky, then, was not merely backdrop, but an active force in the psychological war. At the center of the field, commanders continue to confer, ringed by advisors, quick gestures, nodding heads, fingers pointing toward the horizon. The intimate detail of the letter now enters the greater mosaic. It is no longer the secret of one man, but a cog in larger decision-making. Tension rises, though it is still contained, as if all expect the outcome to emerge more from words than swords. Meanwhile, ordinary soldiers tend to small tasks. Some gather dry branches to feed the fires, others tighten arrows in quivers, testing the firmness of feathers. The smell of burnt wood still lingers in the air, mixing with the salty scent of human sweat. The sense of touch is recalled in the brush of calloused fingers over waxed strings or polished shafts of wood. These simple acts enlarge the scene, showing how war was also built from repetitions. Among the knights, preparations take a different form. Horses are draped with heavy embroidered cloths, squires tugging at straps to tighten the harnesses. The creak of leather, the warmth of the animal's body, the thick breath pouring from its nostrils, all create a ritualistic aura. The contrast between the grandeur of mounted knights and the simplicity of common soldiers makes clear that war was also a display of class. Even their meals showed the divide. Knights received salted meats and larger rations of wine, while common men lived on bread and porridge. This inequality, far from hidden, was part of the very structure of the time. The battlefield, then, was not only a clash of arms, but also an open stage of hierarchy. The heat grows, altering the collective mood. Armor glitters but becomes suffocating ovens. Shields heat beneath the sun, hard to hold. Some men fan their faces discreetly. Others press damp cloths to their mouths to ease the dryness. This physical struggle, seen on such a scale, shows how nature itself dictated the length of combat. Heat, like hunger, was an unseen enemy. The nearby villages form part of the picture too. Women stoke fires, preparing meals, while children dart between wooden houses, peeking curiously at the fields. The smell of thick soup, vegetables and bones simmering, rides on the wind. Life insisted on continuing, even beside looming bloodshed. This coexistence of war and routine reveals the resilience of the medieval world. On the highest hills, monks lift banners with simple crosses. They pray in Latin, asking protection for both sides. The image is paradoxical, prayers rising above the logic of victory and defeat, as if faith wished to embrace every man alike. The deep tones of their voices roll across the field, layering the physical with the spiritual. The battle, in this light, stretched beyond the human. It reached toward the divine. The wind strengthens, raising dust that blurs the view. This natural veil joins both armies in the same golden haze, erasing their lines for a moment. The smell of dry earth fills the nose, while the rough grit of dust clings to skin, coating faces and arms. This shared discomfort creates an invisible link. For that instant, both sides breathe the same dust. And widening the gaze still further, you sense the waiting silence of the land itself. Hills, trees, and fields seem to watch, silent witnesses to events repeated through the centuries. Nature does not judge, it remembers. The breeze flows gently, reminding us that the world will continue its course, no matter what men decide that day. Suddenly, an order rings across the field. The commander lifts his hand, and like a reflex, the ranks stir again. It isn't an attack, but a reorganization. Men swap positions, banners shift a few paces, messengers ride once more across the plain. The motion may seem small, yet it alters everything. The board is being set for a crucial move, and in that moment, you understand that battle is not defined by the clash itself, but by the choreography before it. The widening view reveals war as performance, a theater of gestures, symbols, and preparations. Suspense carries more power than any blade. It is the pause that decides, not the strike. And so this chapter ends. The field has been expanded to its full breadth. Men, animals, sounds, scents, classes, villages, even the sky itself are woven together. Everything connects into a greater tapestry where every thread matters. The field, once pulsing with the movement of troops and the echo of drums, now seems to slow its rhythm. There's a suspension in the air, as though time itself had eased its pace. The louder sounds give way to quiet murmurs. The heat of the sun softens under a fresh breeze, and for a moment the men cease to be soldiers. They become simply human figures beneath the vastness of the sky. It's in this silence that contemplation begins. The tall grass bends under the wind, its rustling like the whisper of ancient voices. The sound is repetitive yet hypnotic, lulling the mind to rest. The damp earth, still carrying the scent of morning dew, blends with the faint perfume of wildflowers carried from afar. The contrast between the harshness of iron and the delicacy of these aromas awakens a sense of harmony. A soldier lowers himself onto a stone, letting his body rest. He gazes at the horizon without urgency, eyes drifting toward the bluish hills. His calloused hands still grip the spear, but loosely now, the weapon serving more as support than as threat. This small gesture reveals how even in war, moments of inner calm could carve out their place. The heat that once suffocated now turns into comfort. The sun, filtered by scattered clouds, warms the skin gently, without aggression. Its touch feels like a light blanket, almost maternal. Breath slow, and even the horses, restless before, lower their heads to graze on fresh grass. The pace eases, and serenity begins to fill the scene. In the distance, the murmur of running water reaches the ear. A narrow stream winds quietly through the field, its surface reflecting pieces of sky. A few men approach to drink, splashing their faces with the cold water. The shock of chill against warmth renews their strength. It's striking to think that during campaigns, springs and rivers were treasures equal to castles, for they meant survival. A group of monks in simple robes gathers beneath a lone tree. They open leather-bound books and chant in Latin, gentle repetitive verses that ripple outward across the plain. Their voices are not commands but offerings, as though blessing not only allies but enemies alike. This detail shows how medieval spirituality reached even into the pauses of war. The scene repeats itself in small gestures. One soldier slips off his leather shoes, rubbing sore feet against cool grass. Another closes his eyes, leaning his head against his shield, swaying with the rhythm of the breeze. A third breaks a piece of hardened cheese, chewing it slowly, savoring it as though it were a feast. Each act is simple, yet magnified in the quiet. The dust raised by earlier movement settles now into a fine layer on boots and shields. When the wind stirs, tiny particles dance in the light like golden sparks. The air takes on texture, the view itself turning almost magical. It's in these fleeting instants we see how nature transforms harsh landscapes into silent beauty. A peasant boy watches from afar, curiosity lighting his face. He doesn't grasp the weight of the scene, yet he feels it nonetheless. His eyes shine not with fear but fascination. He holds a stick like a sword, mimicking the movements he sees from a distance. This small human story reminds us that war was, for many, a spectacle, and that children, innocent, often imitated gestures without understanding their meaning. The breeze shifts, carrying the faint smoke of cooking fires. The scent mixes with crushed herbs, and for a moment the battlefield smells more like a village than a war. The mind drifts to simpler things: clay pots of soup bubbling over hearths, fireplaces warming cold nights, families gathered around the glow of flames. In that moment, the present mingles with distant everyday life. Repetition weaves through everything, shields thumping softly against the ground, feet scraping earth, voices murmuring in rhythm. There's no haste, no violence. The pattern of sound becomes almost meditative, turning the field into an open-air monastery. The silence isn't empty, it's full of life's small pulses. Touch, too, rises to prominence. The cool breeze brushing the face, the relief of sitting, the shock of water on skin, the gentle heat of sunlight softened by clouds. Each sensation grows sharper, as if the body, freed from frenzy, could finally feel the world around it. This physical awareness deepens the sense of contemplation, to be simply to be, without acting. An older soldier pulls a folded parchment from his pouch. It isn't a command, but a family letter. He opens it with care, eyes lingering over each word. The paper, yellowed and smelling faintly of smoke, carries the marks of time. The faded ink recalls voices from home. His quiet reading is a reconnection, proof that even in war, tenderness found space. Curiously, letters were rare in the Middle Ages. Many soldiers couldn't read, and when they received one, they relied on others to read aloud. Intimate words thus became shared, fragments of distant worlds entering the camp, carrying memories, scents, and absent voices. As the scene stretches on, the sky deepens in color. The pale blue of morning fades into shades of gold, a quiet prelude to dusk still far away. The slow change in light reinforces the sense of pause, as though the day itself were breathing deeply. A crow lands on a stump, watches silently, then takes flight. Soon after, a flock of doves sweeps across the sky toward the villages. The contrast doesn't go unnoticed. Death symbol on one side, peace symbol on the other. Duality lingers over the field, reminding us that every pause holds within it the weight of what may come. The calm spreads, almost contagious. The murmur of prayers, the rustling grass, the faint smoke, the warmth of sunlight. Every sense aligns into harmony. Even the sound of iron seems softened, as though steel itself had lost part of its harshness. The scene transforms into a collective breath. In this stillness, a troubadour improvises brief verses, singing softly of courage and hope. His voice is not grand, but tender, almost like a lullaby. He doesn't sing of kings or victory, but of simple gestures. A mother's embrace, the harvest of wheat, the smell of bread baking. That simplicity finds echo in listening faces, reminding them there was still life beyond the battlefield. Contemplation reaches its height when silence returns completely. The wind halts, voices fall, even the animals seem hushed. It's as though the world waits, but without urgency. The silence is dense yet peaceful, rare in its serenity. It announces nothing. It simply exists, filling every space. The field, once seen from above, now shifts into focus as the eye moves closer to individual figures. Among the ranks, it's not the noble knights who stand out, but the simpler men, those whose presence rarely makes it into the chronicles. One of them is a thin archer in worn clothes, his face weathered by the sun. His bow, carved from curved wood, bears no ornament but shows signs of use. He holds it with respect, as if it were an extension of his own arm. The archer breathes deeply and scans the horizon. His eyes, sharp and steady, measure distances unseen. Even without loosing an arrow, he hears the memory of the strings twang. He recalls the fields of his village, where he once practiced by aiming at lonely trees. The smell of freshly cut wood still clings to his hands. In that detail, we glimpse the life of silent, repetitive training that lay behind every weapon. In medieval England, archers were required by law to practice on Sundays after Mass. It was considered a civic duty, almost religious, to keep their skill alive. This custom turned the bow into a symbol of collective discipline, not just of war. The archer before us carries this invisible legacy, his posture shaped by years of habit rather than by immediate command. Beside him an older man stands quietly. He doesn't hold a bow, but a short spear. His body is etched with scars, but his eyes are calm. Resting his weight on a shield, he gazes up at the clouds, as though searching for answers in the sky. Deep within his wrinkles lies a faint smile. It's as if he's seen this scene before, and knows that much of what is foretold may end in minutes. The wind rises, and dust drifts across the soldiers' faces. The taste of earth settles in their mouths, rough and dry, reminding them that even the air could turn against them. Some cough softly, others wipe their lips with the back of a hand. This small discomfort reinforces a truth. The body was always negotiating with nature. There were not only human enemies, but elemental ones too. Suddenly another voice rings out, that of a peasant woman standing on a nearby hill. She clutches a clay jar and calls her small son closer. Her eyes follow the shifting lines, but not with fascination, with worry. For her, the battle is no spectacle, but the threat of losing neighbors, kin, or even the fields she tills. This feminine perspective, nearly invisible in the chronicles, is essential to understanding medieval life. Indeed, many women followed armies in their marches. They cooked, tended the wounded, carried water, and at times dug trenches. Though rarely remembered, their presence was constant. The battlefield wasn't shaped only by armed men, but also by these silent figures who sustained life amid the clash of weapons. The child beside her holds a wooden stick, pretending it's a sword, laughing as he imitates the soldiers. His playfulness stands in stark contrast to the tension all around. It's a reminder that innocence persists, even in the shadow of violence. From the clay jar drifts the scent of fresh milk, carried on the breeze, an intimate, simple detail anchoring humanity within the armed plain. At the other end of the field, a messenger returns at full speed. His horse lathers with sweat, its breath ragged and loud. The leather harness groans under the strain, hooves striking the ground like hurried drums. He dismounts and delivers another sealed letter. The commander reads it in silence, but this time his expression shifts, not to worry, but to discreet relief. We don't yet know its contents, but we sense the day's course may change. The young soldier with ribbons tied to his wrist notices. He can't read seasoned faces, but he feels something has shifted. Gripping the fabric more tightly, he draws strength from its rough texture, anchoring himself to the present. In those faded strips, he remembers the ones waiting for him at home. The troubadour, who earlier plucked his lute, begins again, softer now, almost whispering notes. The music drifts through the ranks like a breeze, easing the tension. It isn't a song of glory, but of longing. Images of simple homes, windows opening to fields of wheat, the smell of bread rising in the oven. The melody becomes a balm for many hearts at once. It's worth noting how music itself served as a tool of war, not only to rouse men, but to bind them together, reminding them of community. The fragile vibration of strings, so easily broken against steel, carried the power of cohesion. It was an invisible weapon, yet indispensable. The sun tilts lower in the sky, and golden light spreads across the field. The air softens. The heat gives way to a gentler warmth. A cooler breeze refreshes weary faces, and even the horses seem calmer. For a brief moment, nature appears to lean toward peace. An old monk approaches the commander, carrying a small wooden cross. He speaks in hushed tones. We cannot hear the words, but it's clear they are not military orders, rather spiritual counsel. The commander closes his eyes, listening not to sound, but to meaning. This scene reminds us how, in the Middle Ages, faith and strategy walked hand in hand, inseparable. Elsewhere, in a modest tent, servants stir pots of soup. The aroma of boiling vegetables fills the air, carrying comfort with it. Soldiers receive wooden bowls, drinking slowly, letting the warmth spread into empty stomachs. It's more than food, it's reassurance. Here we see how the ordinary clung to life, even in extraordinary times. A peasant, summoned in haste to fight, glances at the hoe he left leaning in the corner. Its handle, worn smooth by work, reminds him of the soil he left behind. He grips it for a moment, feeling its familiar texture, and smiles. That fleeting touch reconnects him to the life waiting beyond this day. Fighting may be duty, but farming is his calling. Silence falls again, but it feels different now. Not empty, but layered, with music, with prayers, with the sense of soup and soil. It feels more like a village than a battlefield. Time slows, inviting contemplation. And in this widened perspective, we see the battle for what it is. Not just men with weapons, but a mosaic of lives. Archers shaped by discipline, worried peasant women, playful children, hurried messengers, silent monks, troubadours plucking fragile chords, each figure weaving its thread into the collective fabric. This is the true medieval picture, a tapestry of voices, gestures, and scents. The medieval field, until now marked by silent waiting, begins to pulse in a different way. It isn't the clash of swords that fills the air, but a multiplication of sensations. Every sound seems sharper, every smell more distinct, every touch more vivid. The atmosphere transforms into a living fabric, each thread a sense awakened. The wind blows stronger, lifting golden dust. Particles dance in the sunlight, forming a shimmering haze. To the weary eyes of soldiers, it blurs into something almost mystical, as though the field itself were pierced by divine signs. The warm air carries the taste of earth into their mouths, a rough, lingering flavor, reminding them of the constant presence of the ground beneath their feet. The steady, heavy beat of drums spreads like a heartbeat. Each strike reverberates through the body, humming in the bones. It's a rhythm that both stirs and soothes, reminding all that order still exists within uncertainty. Layered with it comes another sound, the metallic clatter of swords against shields, struck not in anger, but in time to raise morale. The field turns into an uneven symphony. This practice of striking weapons for rhythm was common in medieval armies. It intimidated the enemy, but also reinforced internal unity. The metallic thunder of hundreds of men created a psychological force. It was music and menace at once, proof that war was as much sound as it was steel. The smell of campfire smoke thickens, mixing with sweat and leather, forming an air so dense it feels tangible. Yet within that heaviness, the crushed herbs under horses' hooves release a fresher scent. The contrast makes the scene bearable. The bitterness of war softened by nature's perfume. The nose becomes memory's keeper, recording every layer of life. Touch grows sharper too. The weight of armor on the shoulders is no longer just bothersome, but painful. Sweat clings to skin beneath the iron, sticky and suffocating, and yet the brush of a passing breeze cools the face, a fleeting gift of relief. This constant play between discomfort and comfort reminds us that the body itself was a battlefield. Above human noise rise louder prayers. Monks move through the ranks, their Latin chants echoing like mantras. Though incomprehensible to many soldiers, the words feel familiar, repetitive, lulling the mind. The echoes spread across the plain, layering the physical scene with something spiritual, as though heaven and earth touched for an instant. A group of archers test their strings, pulling and releasing slowly. The sharp snap, like a branch breaking, cuts the air. Ears grow keen to every vibration, distinguishing between well-waxed strings and those worn thin. Even in preparation, sound told its own story, revealing the worth of a weapon before it was ever used. Eyes turn to the banners whipping fiercely in the wind. Once faded by distance, their colors now blaze in golden light. Deep reds, strong blues, white crosses embroidered on cloth. These symbols carried more weight than words, serving as visual anchors in the chaos. For many illiterate soldiers, banners were their only way of reading the war. The heat, though lingering, eases as clouds drift across the sun. Cooler air filters in, lightening the breath. The relief feels like a blessing, and men exhale audibly. This rhythm of suffocation and respite shows how nature itself dictated the pace of battle, imposing invisible pauses. Amid this heightened atmosphere, a small story unfolds. A young soldier spots a crushed flower on the ground. He picks it up, twirls it between his fingers, feels its fragile texture, and tucks it into his shield. The gesture is simple but weighted with meaning. To him, it's a memory of home, a reminder of beauty amid harshness. The taste of fresh water poured from leather flasks becomes a highlight. Some soldiers wet their lips, others let it drip down their faces. The flavor, plain yet vital, feels like a feast. In medieval times, clean water wasn't always available and was often replaced with weak ale. Even that choice shows how necessity shaped daily survival. The cries of birds grow louder. Crows call harshly in unison, soon answered by the swift, light songs of swallows crossing the sky. Omen and hope woven together, the moment itself reflected in their voices. Ears catch both, and the mind sways between fear and comfort. Touch reclaims focus as soldiers clutch ribbons, rosaries, or carved amulets in their hands. The feel of smooth wood, rough fabric, or cold stone brings calm. These textures ground the men, anchoring their thoughts against the swirl of tension. Simple gestures, but powerful acts of inner balance. A troubadour, seated on a fallen trunk, plucks soft notes from his lute. The tune is so faint it seems to vanish in the wind, yet it still finds listening ears. Music, mingling with the sounds of nature, creates unexpected harmony. To those who hear, it feels as if the whole field has become a stage for an invisible concert. The aroma of soup boiling in makeshift pots drifts once more. The warmth of vegetables and bones simmering stirs not only hunger but homesickness. Some close their eyes, letting the smell carry them back to hearths and kitchens. For a moment, scent outweighs sight, transporting hearts far from the field. Vision itself transforms as the sun lowers, spilling deeper colors across the sky. Gold shifts into orange and red, casting bronze light over the soldiers' faces. The plain becomes a living canvas, as though war were only a detail within a grander painting. Silence returns, broken suddenly by the crack of distant thunder. Clouds gather slowly, closing over the sky, a quiet promise of rain. Even before the first drop, the air thickens with the scent of wet earth. Once more, nature steps forward, not as background, but as a hand on the scales of fate. The medieval field begins to shift, almost imperceptibly. The day, once seemingly still, now takes on its own cadence, as though the earth itself were breathing in a slower rhythm. The sky, once clear, drifts with scattered clouds moving lazily, painted in soft hues. The change is subtle, yet constant, a quiet reminder that nothing remains the same for long. The sunlight loses its sharpness. The bright gold softens into a diffused glow, spread like a fine veil over the ranks. The contrast between brightness and shadow dissolves, leaving a gentler atmosphere. This subtle shift touches faces too. Lines of tension soften under the kinder light. Eyes that once darted quickly toward the horizon now settle, calm and unhurried. The temperature follows the light's rhythm. The heat that once suffocated beneath armor begins to ease. A cool breeze stirs, gliding over sweaty skin, bringing instant relief. Soldiers draw deep breaths, close their eyes for a moment, and let the wind cool their faces. The fading warmth and the arriving freshness balance one another, creating a sense of harmony. Sound changes as well. The drum beats slow, leaving longer intervals, almost meditative. The silence between each strike feels just as meaningful as the sound itself. The field vibrates with this slower rhythm, inviting all to rest. In the hush, smaller noises emerge. The rustle of leaves, the call of birds, the distant murmur of voices in prayer. The scents shift too. The sharp odor of sweat and sun-heated iron gives way to the fresher perfume of grass cooled by the wind. Among the ranks drifts the fragrance of herbs crushed beneath horses' hooves. It's as though nature has decided to perfume the air, softening the harshness of the scene. Even the nose follows the field's transformations. Eyes turn toward the horizon, where evening light begins to paint new colors. The pale blue of the sky mingles with strokes of orange and pink, forming a delicate canvas. Armor reflects this palette, glowing with softer tones, the metal less threatening under dusk's touch. The army becomes a shimmering mosaic, more beautiful than fearsome. A horse, restless before, lowers its head to graze quietly. The sound of teeth cutting grass mingles with the breeze, creating an unexpected music. In its calm, the animal reminds the men that life carries on, no matter the moment. This simple image offers hope. If even a horse can eat in peace, perhaps war, too, might give way to peace. The soldiers, sensing the change in atmosphere, shift their behavior. Many sit on stones or fallen logs, letting out short sighs of relief. Others lean against their shields, allowing their bodies to rest, if only briefly. This collective easing comes not from orders, but from the environment itself, which invites repose. Medieval records tell us that battles were often delayed by weather. A strong wind, sudden rain, or even sheer exhaustion could suspend combat. Such pauses were often read as divine signs. In this way, the slow hand of nature wielded greater power over men's fates than swords ever did. The troubadour strums again, this time a gentler melody. Notes float, spaced wide apart, drifting like feathers in the air. His music carries no urgency, only a quiet cadence. Some soldiers close their eyes, rocked by the sound. The ear, now attuned to stillness, finds comfort in this slow tune mingling with the breeze. The breeze strengthens, giving touch new prominence. Cool air brushes sweat-damp skin, drawing faint shivers. The feeling is paradoxical, refreshing, yet a reminder of the body's fragility in the open air. The wind feels almost physical, like invisible hands caressing every face. This tactile detail deepens the moment's immersion. Small gestures mirror the change. One soldier removes his helmet, running his fingers through damp hair, savoring the lightness. Another shares a flask of water with his companion, the cold liquid trickling down his beard. The fresh taste fills the mouth, easing the throat's dryness. These small rituals remind us that life holds steady in the details. The nearby villages seem to respond as well. Smoke drifts more slowly from chimneys, tinted gold by the evening sun. Children still watch from afar, but now their laughter carries clearer, as if distance shielded them from tension. The smell of bread baking in clay ovens wafts across the field, blending with the cool air. The presence of daily life softens the weight of the scene. In the sky, birds circle in wide arcs. Crows still call, though fewer now, while doves appear in contrast, their flight lighter. Eyes follow them upward, a reminder that above all else, life continues. This mingling of omen and hope becomes part of the landscape, reflecting the spirit of the age. The commander stands unmoving, yet less rigid. The letter, still tucked away, remains unread by others, but ever present, mingled with the day's suspension. His gaze drifts across the field, as though he too feels the shift in the air. Authority in this moment is shown not in orders, but in shared silence. The sound of footsteps fades. The ranks, once taut with tension, now lie nearly still. The field seems frozen, a tableau of softened colors and slowed gestures. It's as if history itself had chosen to pause, reflecting upon its own course. This slowness, far from weakness, brings a rare sense of peace in uncertainty. Patience was discipline. Armies were trained not only to fight, but to wait. To hold stillness without breaking was a military virtue, preventing rash action. In this way, the slow rhythm of nature echoed in the men themselves, molded to endure long stretches of waiting. An older soldier begins to recite familiar psalms in a hoarse but steady voice. Soon others join in, layering their voices over his. The sound flows like a chain, each man adding strength to the next. The field fills with this low chant, replacing silence with song. Hope for a time finds its voice in their prayer. The light shifts again as the sun leans toward the horizon. Colors deepen into orange, red, and violet. Armor gleams with fiery tones, as though draped in soft flames. The sunset steals the attention of all, dissolving tension into silent awe. The breeze now carries the scent of distant rain. The nose knows the fragrance of wet earth before the first drop falls. Heads tilt skyward in expectation. Rain promises both hardship and renewal, mud and struggle, but also coolness and life. This duality mirrors the chapter's theme, constant change. Suddenly, thunder rolls in the distance, deep and resonant. It sweeps across the plain, rumbling through chests, but it doesn't bring fear. It's met with calm, almost as part of the music. Thunder blends with drums, weaving an improvised symphony of men and sky. Nature's hand plays alongside theirs. The first drops fall, light, almost shy. They tap against shields and helmets in a steady rhythm. Water streams down faces, washing away salt and sweat. Relief spreads in sighs as the heat gives way to cool. Even the light rain feels like a blessing. The field transforms under nature's slow hand. Dust settles, scents refresh, sounds reshape into new tones. Every sense is touched, every detail redrawn. The army, once a machine of war, now appears simply as men, immersed in a living tableau. The gentle rain from the previous chapter has already passed, leaving behind the fresh scent of damp earth. The field, once covered in dust, now glistens in dark reflections. Wet grass clings to leather boots, and small puddles mirror the grey sky above. In this renewed atmosphere, the story draws inward, slowly preparing the heart for what's to come. The soldiers remain still, yet their expressions have changed. It's no longer the tense expectation of an imminent attack, but a quiet resignation, almost serene. Many gaze toward the horizon as if in contemplation, not awaiting orders. The mood is introspective. Even the horses, their manes damp, lower their heads in silence. Everything seems hushed, as though nature itself had granted a final pause. The wind, now cool, moves gently across the field. It brushes against wet armor, creating a unique sensation. A chill that raises goosebumps, yet soothes weary muscles. This contrast spreads like a collective caress. Touch becomes the dominant sense, reminding all that even the breeze could be felt as a blessing. With every breath of wind, the body finds relief. The prevailing sound is dripping water. Raindrops slide slowly from leaves, falling against shields and spears left on the ground. It's a natural rhythm, steady and meditative. Between each drop lies deep silence, filled only with the slow breathing of men. This cadence of water and quiet rocks the mind into a contemplative state. Sight shifts as well. The sky, streaked in grey and gold, opens into narrow slits of light. Beams break through the clouds, highlighting patches of the field in gentle brilliance. These fragments create symbolic images. A soldier bathed in gold, a horse glowing faintly, a banner shimmering with unexpected radiance. It feels as if the world itself were painting small portraits to mark the moment. Medieval chronicles often recorded such natural signs as divine messages. Sunlight after rain was read as blessing, while heavy clouds meant warning. This spiritual interpretation shaped daily life, where heaven and earth felt closely bound. Men didn't see mere weather, they saw meaning. A group of monks walks between the lines, holding up wooden crosses. They don't raise their voices, but murmur softly, repeating words in Latin. The steady cadence feels like a mantra, deepening the peace of the moment. Many soldiers close their eyes, letting the sound surround them. The battlefield turns into a sacred space, more temple than war ground. The air's fragrance shifts again. Rain heightens the scent of grass, blending with the smell of wet wood and soaked leather. The nose catches every layer, the freshness of earth, the rustic iron tang, the faint sweetness of wildflowers that still cling to the field. This tapestry of scents stirs memories of villages, hearth fires and homes left behind. Within this collective quiet, small stories unfold. One soldier scribbles words on a scrap of parchment for his family. Another sharpens a blade, not in urgency, but out of habit. A third studies the ring on his finger, a reminder of a distant wife. Each intimate gesture adds depth to the scene, showing that even in war, life insists on being personal. The troubadour, seated beneath a wet tree, plucks his lute again. The notes, muffled by damp wood, sound gentler still. It's as if the instrument itself breathes with the field, each string resonating with the wind. The music doesn't rouse, it comforts, reminding everyone that beauty exists even in waiting. Taste also plays its part. Some men share flasks of weak wine, the body-warm liquid bringing internal heat. Others chew damp bread, its sour tang sharpened by rainwater. It's not a feast, but sustenance. This simple flavor ties all to the essence of life, to endure, to eat, to go on. Gradually, the moment takes on a near liturgical rhythm. Movements repeat, tightening straps, adjusting cloaks, drawing deep breaths, glancing at the sky. These cycles create a meditative effect, a prayer without words. Each simple action strengthens the collective hush, preparing spirits for what lies ahead. The commander stands unmoving, the letter still pressed to his chest. His silence speaks louder than words. He raises no sword, issues no orders. He simply watches, as if awaiting something beyond himself. Light glints across his face, revealing not only authority, but humanity. His stillness holds more power than any grand gesture. In the Middle Ages, people believed leaders were guardians of collective destiny. Their silence and choices carried symbolic weight, seen as signs of greater forces. Thus, the commander's quiet waiting held ritual significance. The entire field followed not only his orders, but his posture. Hours pass, and the day leans toward evening. The sun stretches long shadows across the field, turning ordinary men into towering silhouettes. The interplay of light and dark suggests something larger is approaching, not with violence, but with slow inevitability. The wind carries once more the smell of soup from campfires. The warm aroma of simmering vegetables and bones blends with the cool scent of grass. Soldiers smile faintly at the smell, recalling meals at home. This sensory memory affirms their humanity. Before they were soldiers, they were fathers, sons, brothers. The sounds of the field grow more delicate. Wood crackling, rain dripping, quiet conversations weaving together. It becomes a calm melody, like a lullaby. War feels far away, replaced by a shared atmosphere of coexistence. The moment is one of collective retreat. Eyes turn upward again. Clouds part into wide windows, revealing deep blue streaked with gold. Evening approaches gently, painting the horizon with soft strokes. The natural spectacle commands attention, reducing the importance of battle for a while. Beauty takes precedence. Touch returns in new ways. Men warm cold hands at fires, feeling heat crawl back into their fingers. Others shift heavy, wet cloaks across their shoulders, the coarse wool rough but comforting. This tactile connection grounds them, body and environment in sync. A peasant-turned-soldier notices a ladybug land on his shield. He smiles, gently brushes it, and watches it fly off. This tiny moment, hidden within the vastness, belongs to the story as much as anything else. It shows that even in the heart of an army, tenderness and wonder found their place. Some chronicles even mention insects and small animals as omens. A butterfly, a dog, or a bird appearing at key moments could change interpretation of events. In that worldview, nature was not passive. It was an active participant in human fate. Nothing was mere accident. As daylight fades, the field quiets further. Voices drop to whispers, laughter disappears, and only firelight holds back the dark. The smell of smoke thickens, forming an aromatic veil. Fire's warmth contrasts with the wind's chill, a delicate balance of extremes. Thunder rumbles faintly in the distance, yet it no longer stirs unease. It's accepted as part of the coming night. The sky darkens in layers, drawing the field into stillness. Soldiers prepare not for war, but for rest. Time itself shows that true power lies not in swords, but in rhythm. Finally, the commander moves. He draws out the letter, glances at its broken seal, then tucks it away again without a word. His gesture is slow, deliberate, extending the mystery a little longer. Silence remains, but now it carries serene anticipation. Everyone senses the end is near. Night slowly settles over the medieval field, carrying with it a deep calm. The sky, painted in shades of violet and dark blue, fills with stars that glimmer like torches suspended above. The chill of dawn returns, brushing the skin like a delicate veil. The field, once alive with expectation, now rests in stillness. Everything moves toward its natural conclusion. The campfires crackle, casting warm orange glows across weary faces. The sound of burning wood, mingled with the occasional snap of embers, becomes a gentle melody. Soldiers sit in circles, sharing silence more than words. Fire's warmth balances the cool wind drifting across the plain, creating harmony between opposites. This combination soothes both body and spirit. The commander remains at the center, motionless but serene. The letter that stirred so much curiosity rests quietly against his chest. He knows its contents matter less than the choice it inspired. There will be no battle. That silent decision turns expectation into peace. A future that might have spilled blood now becomes rest. The men begin to understand. There are no shouts of victory, no cries of defeat, only acceptance. Some sigh in relief, others gaze at the sky with tear-filled eyes. The silence that follows is not empty. It is heavy with meaning. It is the sound of life preserved, of conflict avoided. The wind carries the scent of smoke from the fires and the freshness of wet grass. Every breath is a reminder that the world remains to be lived. Noses that had been filled with iron and sweat through the day now meet gentler aromas, ones closer to villages, hearths and kitchens. It feels as if the night has returned to the men the fragrance of home. Interestingly, medieval chronicles often tell of battles ending without combat. An agreement, a negotiation, or even a sign read as divine could be enough. Wars that might have lasted for days ended in minutes. The field became a stage for silence, not screams. This story is simply one more among many. The troubadour plays again, this time long, deep notes. His music blends with the chorus of crickets and the distant howl of wolves. It's not a song of glory, but of farewell. Soldiers close their eyes, letting themselves be carried by the tune. The sound drifts across the field like a protective cloak. In the nearby villages, children are already asleep, lulled by stories told by mothers and grandmothers. Perhaps of kings and knights, perhaps of harvests and simple feasts. The contrast between the armed field and common life reminds us that peace is always closer to reality than war. Night unites these worlds in harmony. The sky, now scattered with stars, reflects in the small puddles left by rain. It looks as if the heavens had descended to earth, uniting sky and ground in a silent mirror. The soft light of those stars brings a sense of transcendence. Eyes lose themselves among constellations, finding in the heights a promise of continuity. Touch plays its role as well. Soldiers wrap themselves in heavy cloaks, the coarse wool rough against their skin. Body heat mingles with the warmth of fire, offering comfort. The feel of damp soil beneath their hands reminds them of connection to the earth itself. Weary bodies finally surrender to rest through these small sensations. A monk recites a psalm softly, his words dissolving into the wind. He asks not for victory nor protection, but simply gives thanks for the day's end. His voice blends with the night, becoming part of nature. This quiet spirituality reminds us that faith was a constant companion, even in moments without violence. The taste of weak wine passes again among the men. Warmed by their hands, it offers inner heat. Some sip slowly, others merely wet their lips. The flavor is simple but symbolic, a silent toast to survival, a modest celebration, yet rich in meaning. The field fills with whispered stories. Men speak of villages, of wives, of children. They chuckle softly at memories of festivals and harvests. Personal tales replace the collective narrative of war. Each memory is a seed of humanity planted in the silence of night. The battle never comes, but lives continue. This habit of storytelling by the fire was common. In many armies, nights were filled with songs, recollections, and shared voices. It built bonds and created a sense of community. Even in war camps, intimacy found its way. The warmth of words was as vital as the warmth of flames. The commander rises slowly. He looks toward the dark horizon and raises his hand in a simple gesture. It is finished. No cheers, no celebration, only respectful silence. The motion spreads like a wave, and each soldier understands the night will bring no blood. The wind blows colder, yet it isn't harsh. It feels cleansing, as though sweeping away the day's tension. Skin prickles, but hearts grow warmer. Nature proves itself greater than human conflict. The field, after all, will return to being just a field. The troubadour ends his melody with a quiet chord. The silence that follows is deep but peaceful. Men close their eyes, letting themselves be rocked by the stillness. The sounds of crickets, wind, and fire replace any need for words. It's as if night itself had taken command. Fires die down into glowing embers. The dim red light bathes sleeping faces in serenity. The field has become a shared dormitory, not a battlefield. The shift from expectation to rest is so stark it feels dreamlike. Perhaps the night itself is a story being told. A lone crow crosses the night sky, but its core brings no fear. It vanishes into darkness while the stars remain. What once symbolized doom now feels neutral. The night does not judge, it simply observes. The crow is just a bird, and the sky remains infinite. The smell of damp earth dominates once more. The recent rain left a fragrance that lingers, sweet and fresh. It reminds all that the world will continue its natural cycle. Fields will again grow grass, hills will bloom with flowers, and the memory of this near battle will fade with time. The commander walks a few steps alone and kneels. He presses his hand to the wet soil, closing his eyes in silence. It isn't a gesture of power, but of humility. By touching the ground, he acknowledges that men are fleeting, but the earth is eternal. Symbolically, this action closes the day. Hours pass and midnight comes. The cold deepens, but silence grows even deeper. The entire field sleeps, cradled by natural sounds. Wind, nocturnal animals, water trickling over stone. Rest spreads like an invisible blanket, covering each body with the promise of dawn. The starry sky remains bearing witness. The constellations stand unmoved, indifferent to human choices. The contrast between cosmic grandeur and fragile earthly life offers an eternal truth. Battles are fleeting, but the universe endures. Those who lift their gaze to the stars find peace. And so the story circles back to its beginning. Two armies that had prepared for war end their day without raising swords. Expectation gives way to silence, and violence to contemplation. The field, once tense with threat, now rests as a scene of peace. A circular ending, what could have been war becomes only memory. Until tomorrow, traveler, I'll be waiting here to journey with you again through forgotten times, through moments of quiet courage and unexpected humanity. You already know where to find me, right here, at the threshold between history and dream. Rest well, and may peace be with you.